Shalom, it's Joel Sanchez with Crucified Life Ministries, and today we're looking at the Torah portion, Shemot, which can be found from Exodus chapter 1 through Exodus chapter 6, verse 1. And in this Torah portion, what we actually can see all throughout is justice and righteousness, and honor and shame. So, starting out, we actually see that Pharaoh decrees. There was a new Pharaoh who arises who doesn't know Joseph, and so he begins to decree that, for some reason, he is scared of Israel. And he thinks that Israel is going to take over because Israel outnumbers. He thinks, or he says, that Israel outnumbers the Egyptians. For whatever reason, whether he was lied to or whether he just dreamed this up, I don't know, but the issue is he felt like Israel was a threat to him. So what this new Pharaoh does is he actually makes a decree. And in this decree, it is that that the midwives are to take or to basically kill the Hebrew children, the boys. They're to save the girls, but they're to kill the boys. And this doesn't happen because the midwives pretty much fear Yahweh. And so they actually, when that didn't work, Pharaoh then makes another decree. When the baby boys are born, then throw them in the Nile, throw them in the river, the water. And to us in the West, this doesn't seem, it just kind of seems cruel, and it is, but there's more behind the story that we have to look into the ancient Near East. Because when we do that, we see that there was a great belief among the ancient Near Eastern nations that when someone was on trial, what you did is you threw them in water, or threw them in a lake, or threw them in a river. And if they drowned, then the gods was declaring that person guilty. But if they survived and they could swim and they lived, then the gods declared that person innocent. So therefore, Pharaoh begins to throw these children in the river in order to see who is quote-unquote righteous and who is unrighteous. Many Hebrew baby boys died, but from this story we see that Moshe, or Moses, his name means drawn from the water or drawn out of something. He is the one who lives. And I always wondered why it was that Moshe was allowed to live when many of the other Hebrew baby boys died. And the issue is because he went into the water and did not drown and was taken from the water, then Pharaoh, and he was able to live in Pharaoh's house. Pharaoh believed that the gods had declared this baby boy righteous. But Pharaoh didn't know that this baby boy would in return, in the end, be the deliverer of Egypt and actually be the one who brings judgment back on Pharaoh. And as we'll see in the next few Torah portions, we'll see that Pharaoh, the same method that Pharaoh used to judge the Israelites, it came back on him and was used to judge him when the sea engulfs him and his soldiers. Thus, Yahweh declaring the Israelites righteous and making their innocence known throughout the nations. And that's another issue. Why was it that during this time of slavery that the Israelites didn't cry out before? Well, I'm sure they were crying out before, but here's the situation. When the new Pharaoh, okay, came into power, he didn't do something. And as we've looked at before, and I've shared with you guys before about honor and shame and justice and righteousness, when a new king in the ancient Near East would take the throne, one of the first acts of the king would be to declare freedom to political prisoners, freedom to captives. He would return land to those whose land had been taken from. He would make proclamations, basically, those who had been oppressed, he would proclaim that they no longer would be oppressed, and then he would actually punish the oppressors. So this is, of course, it was a political means during that time, just as it's a political means today. But we see in this case with Israel, this new Pharaoh that came to power, he did not do that. He did not perform an act of justice and righteousness by freeing the Israelites who had been in slavery. And so what he did was he basically guaranteed his judgment later on down the road, especially when the Israelites began to cry out to the God of Israel. And when they began to cry out, Yahweh heard their cries. It reached the heavens. And because of this, they began to cry out because they were being oppressed. And so therefore, through this oppression, when they made their cry, it actually caused Yahweh to actually have a legal lawsuit, a covenantal lawsuit or a legal lawsuit against Pharaoh. And it gave Yahweh grounds to actually bring judgment against Egypt and the Pharaoh as well. So we're going to see this play out throughout the next few portions, but this kind of sets the tone for the rest of the next few chapters that we're going to look at in Exodus, dealing with justice and righteousness, and honor and shame. And the aspect of honor and shame, Israel in the slavery, they were being shamed, okay, and Pharaoh was eventually the same methods, or not the same methods, but how he was shaming Israel, this was actually going to come back upon him in the end, and he and Egypt were going to be shamed, and Israel was going to be honored in the end when they're brought out of Egypt and they're taken into the land. You can see this issue of trial by water in many different aspects. One aspect is the life of Jonah. This is why I believe that many people, when he went into Nineveh, remember, he was in the belly of a whale or some type of large sea creature, a fish, and when he was there for 3 days, and when he was spit back up on the beach, he probably went into Nineveh telling them what had actually happened to them. Who knows? Nineveh may have even actually seen the fish spit him back up on the beach. And if that's the case, then in their minds, because it was the ancient Near East, they said, oh my gosh, this man is an innocent man. So when Jonah shows up preaching the quote-unquote gospel to them, telling them to repent, not only did the king of Nineveh make a decree for the city to repent in sackcloth and ashes, but he even had the animals actually go on a fast with them. That's how big of an impact this trial by water situation is. So we're going to look at this further in detail in the next coming Torah portions, but I do want to leave you with something because Yahweh mentions to Moshe that he's going to give them the land, he's going to use them to bring the Israelites out of slavery, but he's also going to give them the land of the Canaanites, the Perizzites, and the Hittites, and the Jebusites, all the ites. And this is interesting because if we go back and we read in Genesis, remember Abraham was told something. And it was about the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet complete. When Yahweh promised Abraham the land, he said, you're going to go to your grave a great old age. So don't worry about this, because the fullness of the Amorites is not yet complete. So I just wanted to whet your appetite with that, and I'm going to explain more in the next a couple of portions ahead of now about that concept, about the fullness of iniquity and what it actually entails. Shalom, this is Joel Sanchez with Crucified Life Ministries.